The airport was bustling that morning, full of farewells and departures, but nothing felt as chaotic as the thoughts inside Yin's head. Amid the crowd, Yin stood with her parents. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, and her hand clutched her mother's arm tightly, as if unwilling to let go. Just behind them stood Jungkook, silent and still. He didn't say much, but his presence was undeniable. Dressed in a black jacket and jeans, his expression remained unreadable, though his eyes quietly observed every detail around him. Yin and Jungkook's relationship wasn't the type that blossomed from a sweet meeting in the library or through casual conversations on campus benches. They were both in the same major, international business, but in different classes, and had barely spoken to each other. Jungkook was known for his cold and reserved demeanor, while Yin was warm, approachable, and friendly. Their worlds were as far apart as two poles until the engagement came. What seemed like an outdated tradition at first was, to both Yin and Jungkook's families, a matter of trust and respect. Their fathers had been business partners for over a decade, and when Yin's father received a major opportunity to expand the family business to Japan, opening a new main branch, he was faced with one difficult decision: leaving his only daughter alone in Seoul. "If you come with us to Japan, your studies will be disrupted, but we also won't feel at ease if you're left alone here," her father had said one night. That was when everything started. Their parents didn't force them into marriage. They were only engaged. It was a way to strengthen the bond between the two of them and to ensure that Yin would have a trustworthy companion while her parents temporarily relocated to Japan. Now, Yin tried to hold back her tears as her mother gently fixed her hair one last time, just like she used to do when Yin was a little girl heading off to school. "We're only leaving for a while, sweetheart. 2 years. Maybe 3 at most, but you have to be strong. You need to learn to stand on your own, even if you're not truly alone," her mother said, casting a brief glance toward Jungkook. "He may seem distant, but he's not a bad person. Take it slow. Get to know him. Not every relationship has to start with love," her mother continued, her voice softer this time. Yin lowered her head slightly, nodding without saying a word. "I'm entrusting Yin to you, Jungkook," her mother said to Jungkook with a hopeful smile. "She may seem strong, but she has a gentle heart. She tends to keep things to herself." Jungkook gave a respectful nod. "I'll take care of her, Mom." Yin's father patted Jungkook on the shoulder. "We trust you, Jungkook. We know the Jeon family is reliable, and we won't burden you both with too many rules, as long as Yin feels comfortable." The words lingered in the air for a moment. Yin shifted her gaze from her parents to Jungkook, the one person who would remain by her side in Korea. Jungkook simply bowed again. "I'll take care of her, Dad," he said briefly, and that was enough. "Take care of yourselves in Japan," Yin finally said, trying to smile, though her voice trembled. Her mother pulled her into a tight embrace, followed by her father. There were no dramatic tears, only deep hugs, yet somehow, they struck Yin harder than any crying ever could. After that final embrace and one last smile, Yin watched her parents walk toward the departure gate. Moments later, the boarding announcement echoed through the airport, and the reality began to hit her, slowly and painfully. She was truly on her own now, without her father and mother, though not completely alone, because Jungkook would be with her. Without saying a word, Jungkook led her toward the parking lot. Yin was surprised when she glanced through the rear window and saw her suitcase, previously still at home, already inside the trunk. "This is my suitcase?" Jungkook turned to her. "I brought it earlier, before we took your parents to the airport. Figured I'd load it along with your parents' luggage so we wouldn't have to go back and forth. That way, we can go straight to my apartment." Yin gave a faint smile. "Thank you. That means we don't have to stop by my place to get this." The car cruised through the city streets. No words were exchanged. Only the soft hum of a jazz instrumental flowed from the speakers, filling the silence between them. Jungkook drove calmly, eyes fixed on the road. Meanwhile, Yin stared out the window, quietly accepting that the apartment they were heading to would now be her new home, with a man who still felt like a stranger, even though they were now officially engaged. Once they arrived at Jungkook's apartment, he silently pulled her suitcase from the trunk. He opened the front door and stepped aside, allowing Yin to enter first. The apartment was spacious, clean, and elegant. Too clean to be lived in by a man. And yet, this place would now become the witness to the beginning of a life shared by two young people who still had no idea how to be a couple. "Your room's on the right," Jungkook said, standing near the sofa. "And like we agreed, we won't make our engagement public just yet. Campus stays campus. I don't like unnecessary attention." Yin nodded slowly. "Yeah, I don't like gossip either," silence settled in once again. Only the soft hum of the air conditioner and the sound of their breathing, both carefully measured, filled the room. But just before Yin stepped into her room, Jungkook's voice came again, softer this time. "If you need anything, I'm here." Yin turned her head slowly. For the first time, she caught a gaze in Jungkook's eyes that wasn't entirely cold. There was a hint of softness there. She gave a slight nod and a faint smile. Maybe this wasn't love, not closeness, not comfort, but maybe it wasn't the start of something bad either. The first few days in the apartment were awkward. Yin and Jungkook spoke only when necessary. Even though they lived under the same roof, it felt like there was an invisible wall between them. But time slowly began to chip away at that distance. Without realizing it, small routines began to grow between them. Almost every morning, they had breakfast together. Sometimes Jungkook would wake up first and prepare toast, sunny side-up eggs, and black coffee. Other times, Yin would prepare simple things, toast with jam, or instant porridge with sliced boiled eggs. But truthfully, it was Jungkook who most often took charge in the kitchen. "I've been used to cooking for myself since I moved out during my first year of college," he said one morning while flipping an egg in the pan. "If you want to help, just handle the dishes." Yin chuckled as she sat at the dining table, letting the savory aroma fill the room. "All right, I'll do the dishes." She wasn't nearly as skilled as Jungkook in the kitchen. Preparing instant meals and slicing fruits were pretty much the extent of her abilities. But she was getting used to seeing Jungkook's back in the kitchen every morning, and it was starting to feel comforting. For dinner, Jungkook usually ordered catering from his usual spot, but lately, he had started asking, "What do you feel like eating tonight?" Even though they didn't talk much, Jungkook was beginning to care about what Yin wanted. Little interactions like that began to grow without them noticing. From being awkward strangers, they were now able to sit comfortably on the same couch, watching dramas or evening news together. Sometimes Yin would share stories about her college assignments. Jungkook would respond briefly, but he always listened. They never talked about love, nor the future, but warmth began to bloom in their quiet moments together. Their relationship wasn't something explosive or full of drama. It grew like a plant slowly, but steadily. And even though words like love or affection hadn't been spoken between them, Yin's smile when Jungkook handed her a warm cup of tea at night, or the way Jungkook glanced at her when she fell asleep on the couch, those were signs enough. They were getting used to each other. They were beginning to fill the empty spaces in one another. Even though they lived under the same roof and were slowly getting used to each other, Yin and Jungkook continued to keep their distance on campus. It was as if they had returned to being two strangers living in completely different worlds. In the faculty hallway, Yin often saw Jungkook from afar, usually surrounded by his three close friends, Minju, Yoonwoo, and Jaehyun. Sometimes, two girls, Nari and Mona, would also join them. Jungkook seemed different when he was with them, more open, more relaxed, even laughing out loud at their jokes from time to time. But whenever his eyes met Yin's from across the corridor, something in his expression shifted. His gaze became more attentive, more focused, and his lips would curl into a faint smile, one that only Yin could truly understand. Yin did the same. She never called out to him, never walked over, but her eyes always searched for him. In her silence, she realized she could recognize his broad shoulders even in the middle of a crowd. And every time Jungkook gave her that small smile from a distance, her heart would beat just a little faster, even if no words were exchanged. Meanwhile, Jungkook noticed Yin in his own way. He knew she often walked with her two closest female friends, Yuju and Mina, but there were two other names that gradually caught his attention, Bam Bam and Yugyeom. Both guys seemed to be part of Yin's circle. Still, even with that growing curiosity, Jungkook never asked. Just like Yin never questioned Nari or Mona's presence around him. None of their friends knew, not a single one. The relationship between Yin and Jungkook was a secret they kept tightly guarded, not out of shame, but because they both knew. They weren't ready to explain something that, in truth, hadn't entirely been their choice to begin with. Yet, their shared smiles from a distance, they were enough, for now. And even though their steps never walked side by side through the campus halls, they both knew. Later that day, they would still have dinner at the same table and spend the evening together, just the two of them. That night, the apartment felt quieter than usual. The living room lights were dim, and the gentle scent of jasmine tea brewed by Yin still lingered in the air. In the midst of that calm, Yin spoke up, glancing toward Jungkook, who was seated on the sofa, focused on reading his class material on his tablet. "Tomorrow's Sunday," Yin said softly, trying to start a light conversation. Jungkook replied without looking up. "Come with me to the movies?" Jungkook finally turned to her, raising an eyebrow slightly. To the movies? Yin nodded with hope in her eyes. Yeah, there's a movie I really want to watch, and I want to watch it with you. Jungkook went silent for a moment before slowly shaking his head. I'm not really into going to the cinema. Yin's expression changed instantly. Huh, why? I'm not comfortable with loud noises. The volume's too high, gives me a headache. I prefer watching at home, with soft sound, calm and quiet. His reply was calm, but it was enough to make Yin pout. Oh, Yin lowered her gaze, resting her chin on her knees while hugging a small pillow. Her lips were pursed, and her disappointment was written all over her face. I just really wanted to go out. I wanted to spend time with you outside, not always at home, she muttered. Jungkook glanced at her, noticing the sulky look on her face. He let out a soft sigh and closed his tablet. Then, how about we watch something here instead? I'll watch with you. Pick any movie you want, and I'll make popcorn. Or I can go out and get some snacks, your choice, he said, his tone softening. Yin looked up slowly, her lips still pouting. But it's not the same as going to the movies. I know, but you also know I'm really not comfortable in the cinema, Jungkook said, still calm. But if you want to make it feel similar, we can watch at night so it's dark. I'll turn off the lights, turn on the LED strip under the shelf, set up the small speakers, and we can sit on the carpet with a blanket. How's that? Yin didn't respond right away. She just looked at Jungkook for a long moment, then finally gave a small smile, though traces of her annoyance still lingered. Fine, that's okay, she said, half reluctant. Jungkook nodded. What time do you want to start tomorrow night? 7 o'clock, Yin answered quickly, her excitement slowly returning. Deal, you choose the movie, I'll take care of the snacks. And just like that, their Saturday night ended with a sweet little plan. It wasn't the movie date Yin had hoped for, but for the first time, Jungkook made an effort to adjust himself for her. And to Yin, that was already something special. Night had fallen, just as planned. At exactly 7 o'clock, Yin was already sitting cross-legged on the living room carpet, her hair loosely tied back and drowning in her oversized hoodie. Jungkook came from the kitchen carrying a big bowl of warm popcorn and 2 bottles of cold drinks. Is the movie ready? He asked, settling down beside her. It is. I picked a superhero film. Is that okay? Yin turned to him with a playful grin. You said I could choose the movie. Jungkook nodded, not objecting. Sure, just don't ask me to wear a cape and a mask, he replied flatly, though the corner of his lips curved into a small smile, a smile that Yin was starting to recognize more often now. Before the movie began, they pushed the table to the side so they could stretch out their legs comfortably. Jungkook fetched a large blanket from his bedroom and, without saying much, draped it over both of them. Its warmth immediately enveloped the atmosphere. The lights were turned off, leaving only a soft blue LED strip glowing under the shelf. The movie's sound played quietly from the small speaker in the corner. The laptop screen was connected to the TV, and the outside world faded away. They sat side by side, their legs brushing lightly beneath the blanket. Yin stole glances at him now and then, especially as the movie picked up pace. His gaze was calm and focused, his face appearing softer under the flickering light from the screen. A few minutes passed, and Yin slowly rested her head on Jungkook's shoulder. She didn't say a word, just leaned in gently, testing whether he would pull away or let her stay. And to her surprise, Jungkook didn't move away. He remained still, as if his shoulder had always been meant for her that night. Yin's heartbeat quickened slightly, but she smiled quietly to herself. Jungkook glanced briefly at the top of her head resting on him. Something warm stirred slowly in his chest. He didn't quite understand what that feeling was, but he knew he wouldn't mind if nights like this happened again. The superhero movie kept playing on the screen, its flickering light from the action scenes reflecting softly on the dim walls of the apartment. Beneath the shared blanket, Yin remained curled against Jungkook's shoulder, letting the familiar scent of his hoodie calm her. Jungkook didn't say a word, didn't pull away. He let Yin stay there, gently leaning against his side, as if it was something he'd grown used to. And maybe that was why Yin became a little braver. Slowly, from beneath the blanket that covered them from the waist down, Yin slid her hand to the side, searching for Jungkook's large, steady hand resting on his thigh. She hesitated for a moment, swallowed quietly, then gathered the courage to touch the back of his hand with her fingertips. Jungkook didn't flinch, he didn't move, so with a slightly held breath, Yin gently took his hand carefully, as if afraid he might pull away in protest. And at that moment, Jungkook turned to her, slowly. At the exact same time, Yin turned to him too. Their eyes met under the dim light from the TV screen, silent, yet filled with meaning that words couldn't quite capture. There was no sound except the movie playing in the background, which now felt distant in their ears. The world seemed to shrink, leaving only the two of them. And without much expression, without saying a word, Jungkook finally returned Yin's hold. His long, warm fingers slowly moved, gently interlacing with hers. The grip wasn't tight, nor was it rushed, but it was enough to make Yin's chest feel warm and full. They didn't speak. They just looked at each other for a moment before Yin gave a faint smile and rested her head back on Jungkook's shoulder. Beneath the blanket that wrapped them together and the soft light that filled the room, two hearts that once felt like strangers slowly began moving in the same direction. And perhaps, without either of them realizing it, that was how it all began. Not from a word called love, but from a simple, quiet handhold that neither wanted to let go. Without realizing it, the calendar hanging on their living room wall now showed the number 23. That meant only 8 more days until October began, and just like every year, the Seoul International Fireworks Festival would once again be held at Uido Hanggang Park. Yin had been looking forward to this moment for a long time. She even saved the digital poster of the event on her phone, marked the date, and quietly imagined how magical that night would be if she could experience it with Jungkook. That night, as they were sharing snacks together in the living room, Yin spoke up with a spark of excitement she could barely hide. You know what? 8 more days until October. There's going to be a fireworks festival at Uido. Let's go together, yeah? She asked, eyes gleaming with hope as she looked at Jungkook. But Jungkook only chewed slowly, then shook his head without hesitation. I've told you, I don't like crowded places, Yin, especially fireworks. Too loud. The smile on Yin's face immediately faded. Are you serious? This is an annual event. Everyone wants to go, even the parking passes sell out fast. That's exactly why. It's too packed, too noisy. It feels like being stuffed in a can of sardines, Jungkook replied, as calmly as ever. But this time, Yin couldn't hide her disappointment. She furrowed her brows and set her glass down with a bit of force. You always say no whenever I ask you to go out. Always saying uncomfortable, too loud, don't like it. Jungkook, the world isn't just apartments and quiet cafes. If you want, we can go to Namsan Tower next week when it's not a holiday. Or someplace open, not crowded. I'll go with you really. We can even go to the beach. How about that? Jungkook tried to soothe her this time, his voice calm and gentler. But this time, it wasn't enough for Yin. It's not about the place, Jungkook. It's the moment. We can go to the beach anytime, and we can go to Namsan Tower whenever. But the Uido Fireworks Festival only happens once a year. Yin's voice rose, her eyes welling up. And when Jungkook didn't respond, didn't even try harder to understand how she felt, Yin stood up, taking long strides toward her bedroom. Without looking back, she opened her door and slammed it shut, hard enough to make the walls tremble slightly. For the first time since they started living together, they fought, and the apartment that had always felt warm suddenly turned cold, silent. Only the ticking of the clock remained, counting the seconds from one silence to the next. Since that night, 2 days had passed, and the atmosphere in their apartment had changed drastically. Yin kept avoiding Jungkook. She no longer joined him for breakfast, opting instead to eat on campus. The dining table, which usually had 2 cups of tea and 2 warm plates, now only had 1. Jungkook sat alone every morning, staring blankly at Yin's bedroom door, which remained tightly shut. He had tried knocking on it multiple times. Yin, come have breakfast. You'll be late, he called softly on the first morning. But there was no answer, not even the sound of footsteps from inside the room. The evening was no different. Jungkook waited at the dining table with the usual catering box, opening one for Yin and one for himself, but Yin never came out. Yin, come have dinner, Jungkook called carefully. I'll eat later. I don't want to eat with you. Hearing that, Jungkook let out a deep sigh. All right, we'll go to the fireworks festival at Uido. Silence. No response from her. Yin, did you hear me? Jungkook asked again to make sure. Come out now for dinner. I promise I'll take you to see the fireworks. But shortly after, Yin's voice came again, colder this time. Don't bother. I don't want it anymore. My mood's already ruined. Jungkook stood frozen. This time, he was truly at a loss for how to deal with Yin. He returned to the dining table. Once again, Yin's meal remained untouched, and Jungkook could only stare at the empty plate in front of him and let out a long sigh. On campus, things were no better. They crossed paths in the hallway like usual, but there were no longer any small smiles from afar. No more glances that spoke of mutual understanding. Yin even pretended not to see Jungkook. She would turn her head the other way, walk faster, or pretend to chat with Mina or Yuju, anything to walk past him without making eye contact. That morning, the atmosphere in Class 3B of the business faculty felt much lighter than usual. Jungkook sat in the back row with his close friends, Minju, Yoonwoo, Jaehyun, and their two female friends, Nari and Mona. Good news had just spread through their group chat. Professor Lee, the lecturer for Global Management Strategy, couldn't come today due to urgent matters off campus. There would be no substitute lecturer, meaning the class was cancelled this morning. Yes, shouted Minju, dropping onto his desk, followed by laughter from the others. But we still have risk and investment management this afternoon, said Jaehyun, checking the schedule on his phone. No point going home now. Instead of being bored, let's play truth or dare, suggested Mona enthusiastically. I'm in, Yoonwoo jumped in. Anyone who picks truth is a coward. The game began. One by one, everyone took turns. Laughter filled the room as dares got more ridiculous. One had to treat them all to lunch at the canteen for a week, another had to send funny texts to a professor, and someone even had to sing in the campus courtyard. Everyone brought their wildest ideas. Then came Jungkook's turn. All eyes turned to him. Jungkook, truth or dare? Yoonwoo asked with a mischievous grin. Jungkook looked around at them for a moment, then nodded calmly. Dare. Yeah, they all shouted in unison, thrilled that all the guys were picking dare. Minju whispered something to Jaehyun and Yoonwoo. They nodded in agreement, and Jaehyun spoke up. Alright, you're dare. In Yin's class, the lecture had just ended. The morning and afternoon courses were wrapped up by the professor with a group assignment, and students started packing their things. The classroom was slowly emptying out, but Yin remained in her seat, resting her chin on her hand, lost in thought. Yuju glanced over. Not going home, Yin? Yin flinched slightly. Not yet. I still feel like staying out a bit. Mina looked at her suspiciously. You're usually the first one to rush out once class is over. Yin just gave a faint smile. She couldn't possibly tell them the real reason. She couldn't say that the real reason she was stalling was because she lived under the same roof as Jeon Jungkook, the most popular student in the business department, and her fiancé. And the truth was, Yin was still on a mission to avoid him, still upset and sulking over her cold-hearted fiancé. I just feel like walking around a bit. Being alone in my room feels suffocating, she finally said, trying to sound casual. Yuju and Mina exchanged glances, and then Mina smiled. Then don't be alone. Let's go watch a movie, just the three of us. We haven't had girls' time in a while. I'd love that, Yuju chimed in excitedly. Yin looked at them, her smile slowly growing. Seriously? Okay, I'll book the tickets now. The three of them left the classroom in high spirits, chatting about which movie they wanted to watch. The movie had just ended. Yin, Yuju, and Mina stepped out of the theater with the other moviegoers. The hallway lights were now fully on. Laughter and casual conversations filled the air, warm despite the night. The romantic film they had just watched left a deep impact on Yin, but not one of sweetness or nostalgia. It brought a piercing loneliness instead. Throughout the movie, Yin tried to ignore the image of Jungkook that kept surfacing in her mind. She wanted to feel free, to enjoy time with her friends, but her heart couldn't lie. Why did you suddenly go quiet, Yin? Mina asked softly. Yin only gave a faint smile, but before she could answer, her steps came to a sudden halt. Her gaze was fixed on a row of waiting seats outside another theater that hadn't begun its screening yet, and there, sitting side by side, were Jungkook and Nari. What? Yin whispered to herself, eyes widening in disbelief. Her heart felt like it stopped for a moment. The world seemed to stand still. Then, their eyes met. Jungkook, who hadn't noticed Yin before, now looked up and froze. His expression changed instantly, shocked, confused, like he'd been caught red-handed. But not a single word escaped his mouth, not from Nari either, who turned and saw Yin standing not far from them, and that was enough. Without thinking, Yin turned around. I'm going ahead, she whispered quickly to Yuju and Mina, who looked stunned. Yin, hey, what's wrong? Wait. But Yin didn't respond. She rushed out of the cinema, pushing through the crowd, hiding her tear-streaked face. Inside her car, Yin's hands were trembling as she started the engine. She tried to take a deep breath, but her chest felt tight. The image of Jungkook and Nari kept replaying in her mind, like a bad movie she couldn't turn off. If he didn't like going to the movies, why was he there with Nari? One by one, painful questions hit her. Her heart ached, not just from jealousy, but from the sting of betrayal. If Jungkook truly had feelings for Nari, why agree to the arranged marriage? Why let her live with him and create a warmth that made Yin start to hope? Her tears became uncontrollable. She wiped them with the back of her hand, but they wouldn't stop. Stupid. Why did I let myself hope? She stepped harder on the gas. She just wanted to get home, to lock herself in her room and cry her heart out. Because today, her heart truly broke. The apartment door flew open. Yin stepped inside, breath ragged and tears still streaming. She didn't even take her shoes off properly, heading straight for her room. Her hand trembled as she reached for the doorknob, wanting to disappear, to escape the pain crushing her chest. But then, the door opened again. Jungkook had just arrived. His steps were quick, as if he already knew Yin was going to try to escape. And just as Yin was about to open her bedroom door, a large hand grabbed her arm. Yin, wait. Let go, Yin shouted, trying to pull away. Her tears fell harder now, streaming down her cheeks. She turned her face away, unable to look at him. But Jungkook didn't let go. His grip tightened. Just listen to me, okay? I don't want to listen. You lied. You said you hated the cinema. You said the sound was too loud. But there you were, sitting with Nari at the cinema. Yin screamed, still fighting back. Her voice cracked, her breathing was erratic, and her body was trembling from the anger and hurt that had built up. It's not like that. Then what is it, huh? You just didn't want to go with me. You just didn't want to spend time with me. But with her, you could. You chose her over me. Yin. Jungkook's voice was firm enough to stop her in her tracks. And before Yin could say another word or run away, he pulled her into his arms. Her trembling body was now held tightly in a warm embrace, tight, leaving no room for her to escape again. Enough. Stop running. Stop avoiding me, he whispered softly into her ear. Yin weakly hit his chest, faintly, messily, almost without strength. I hate you. Why did you make me hope? She sobbed. Jungkook closed his eyes, tightening his arms around her. I never meant to hurt you, baby. Please, just listen to me, okay? If you don't, you'll never know the truth. Still in Jungkook's embrace, Yin finally began to soften. Her tears hadn't fully stopped, but she no longer pushed or hit his chest. Her voice still carried sharpness, but it was laced with sobs that hadn't quite faded. Why were you there, Jungkook? She asked softly, but her words were heavy with pain. You lied. Didn't you? You said you didn't like movie theaters. You said you were uncomfortable, but you were sitting next to Nari. Jungkook took a long, slow breath and said, You want to know? Fine, listen closely. Flashback. You dare. You have to treat us to a movie this afternoon. 6 people, all of us. Jungkook immediately protested. You guys know I hate going to the movies. You planned this. Exactly why it's the dare, Jaehyun said, laughing. I still won't go into the theater, Jungkook muttered. I'll pay for the tickets, but don't force me to sit in there. Min just shook his head firmly. No way, that's not the dare. You have to join, that's the point. I get migraines from loud sounds, Jungkook refused again. Fine, then your alternative dare. Date Jasmine for a week, Mona blurted out, laughing. Jungkook's face immediately stiffened. You're insane. They all burst into laughter. Everyone knew how obsessed Jasmine was with Jungkook, but he always firmly rejected her. That's why the movie is the safer option. Just sit with us for 2 hours, and it's done, Yoonwoo said, patting his shoulder. Finally, reluctantly, Jungkook nodded. Okay, but if I get a migraine, you're all responsible. That afternoon, after classes ended, Jungkook, Minju, Jaehyun, Yoonwoo, Mona, and Nari gathered at the theater as planned. Jungkook still looked reluctant, but since it was part of the dare, he didn't complain further. After getting their tickets, they sat on a bench near the theater entrance, waiting for the doors to open. The area was crowded with other moviegoers for the same screening. Suddenly, Nari stood up. I'm gonna get more snacks. Anyone want anything? Caramel popcorn, Nari. Mona responded quickly. A chocolate bar if they have one, Yoonwoo added. Nari nodded and walked to the snack counter. A few minutes later, Jaehyun checked his watch. Movie starts in 10 minutes. Does anyone need to hit the restroom? It's over 2 hours long. Min just stood up. Yeah, don't want to rush out mid-movie. I'm going too, Mona said. Me as well, Yoonwoo agreed. Jungkook shook his head. I'm good. I already went to the restroom on campus earlier. Jaehyun patted his shoulder before the group headed to the restrooms, leaving Jungkook alone on the bench. It got quieter. Jungkook pulled out his phone, checked the time and sighed. Not long after, Nari returned with a plastic bag full of snacks. She saw Jungkook sitting alone. "Where'd the others go?" she asked, sitting beside him. "Restroom," Jungkook replied briefly, not looking up. Nari nodded. "Oh, I already used the restroom on campus." And at that moment, Yin stepped out of the theater with Yuju and Mina and saw Jungkook and Nari sitting together. Flashback ends. Yin fell silent for quite a while. Her body was still wrapped in Jungkook's embrace, but now her sobs had begun to fade, leaving only a few soft sniffles and heavy breaths. Her head hung low, no longer resisting, but not fully softened either. "So you really don't have anything going on with Nari?" Yin asked again, wanting to be sure. Jungkook shook his head, still holding her close. "You didn't know? Nari's dating Minju." Yin blinked in surprise, then let out a small sigh of relief. "What about Mona?" she asked again, still sniffling. Jungkook chuckled softly. "You don't have to be jealous, baby. Mona's taken too. She's dating a guy from civil engineering." Again, relief washed over Yin's expression. Then Jungkook let out a quiet sigh. "But, I'm sorry, they all know about us now. Right before I came after you, Jaehyun and the others stopped me. I had no choice but to explain everything, just to get them off my back." Jungkook slowly released the hug, lifting her chin gently to look at her tear-streaked face. With tender fingers, he brushed away the remaining tears from her cheeks. "Hey, don't cry anymore. I can't stand seeing you like this," he whispered softly. "I told you, didn't I? I'll go with you to the fireworks festival." Yin stayed silent. Her lips jutted out slightly in a lingering pout. Jungkook let out a small sigh then, without warning, leaned in and gave her pouting lips a quick kiss. "Yeah," Yin gasped in surprise, lightly hitting his chest. Her cheeks turned bright red. Jungkook smirked mischievously. "If you keep pouting, I'm gonna kiss you again." Yin hit him again, this time with both hands. "You're insane." But Jungkook only chuckled quietly and pulled her into another hug. This time, Yin didn't resist. She allowed herself to rest in his arms, letting her hands dangle limply at her sides. A warmth slowly began to spread in her chest, melting the leftover anger. "I'm sorry," he whispered sincerely. "I never meant to make you mad, or to hurt you." Yin didn't reply immediately. She closed her eyes for a moment, but then her lips curved into a small, barely there smile, though the pout still lingered. "Sorry isn't enough," she murmured at last. Jungkook raised his brows slightly, still smiling. "Then what should I do to make it up to you? We're going to the Yoido fireworks festival later, remember?" Yin opened her eyes and shook her head slowly. "I still want to watch a movie with you at the theater." Jungkook sighed in mock defeat, but his eyes remained soft and his smile unwavering. "Alright, if that's what the princess wants, then your humble servant will obey," he said, bowing playfully. Yin let out a small laugh, her heart finally, completely thawed. For the first time after a few chaotic days, she felt at peace and truly happy. The autumn night in October felt cool and pleasant. A gentle breeze carried the distinct scent of fall, crisp leaves, warm street food from nearby stalls, and the clean air drifting off the Han River. The sky above Yoido that night was perfectly dark, waiting to be lit up by thousands of sparks. Amid the crowd gathered at the riverside park, Jungkook and Yin sat side by side on a thick blanket laid out over the grass. They had arrived since the afternoon, securing the best spot to enjoy the fireworks without any obstruction. Yin wore a light brown coat and a gray wool scarf, her hair let loose around her shoulders. In her hand was a small cup of hot chocolate. Meanwhile, Jungkook sat beside her in a black hoodie and a warm jacket, one hand tucked into his pocket, the other holding Yin's hand tightly beneath the blanket they shared. "Are you cold?" Jungkook asked softly, leaning a little closer. "No, not with you here," Yin replied with a shy smile, her cheeks turning pink. Whether from the chill or her words, it was unclear. Jungkook chuckled quietly. "Can't believe we actually made it to this festival, together." "Just like you promised," Yin said with a wide smile. Before Jungkook could respond, the first explosion echoed through the sky. A large golden firework bloomed overhead, illuminating the faces below. Cheers and applause spread across the park. Both Jungkook and Yin looked up, their eyes wide in awe. "I'll never get tired of watching this," Yin whispered. Jungkook didn't reply. Instead, he looked at Yin, completely captivated by the lights above. The colors of the fireworks reflected in her eyes, making her face glow with beauty and life. He couldn't help but smile. "If it's you, I'll never get tired either," Jungkook murmured. Yin turned her head quickly, her eyes wide. "What did you just say?" "Secret." Jungkook smiled faintly, then tightened his grip on her hand. Once the fireworks show ended and the night grew late, Jungkook and Yin finally decided to head home. The streets leading to their apartment were still glowing with street lights and the lingering warmth of the festival earlier. They walked side by side, their hands still tightly intertwined. When they arrived at the apartment, they entered slowly. Instead of going straight to their respective rooms, they sat together on the couch in the living room. Smiles still lingered on their faces, and the warmth of the night hadn't completely faded yet. "That was so much fun," Yin said, resting her head briefly against the back of the sofa. Jungkook nodded, his eyes never leaving her face. Yin chuckled softly. "Even though you don't like loud noise, will you still go with me next year?" "I'd better say yes, or else you'll sulk," he replied. Surprisingly, Yin wasn't offended by his teasing. She simply gave him a wide, sincere smile. Jungkook smiled back, but then his smile slowly faded, replaced by a deeper, more intense gaze. He looked at her with quiet seriousness, leaning in closer. Yin could feel her heart racing. She knew what was about to happen, yet strangely, she didn't want to pull away. And sure enough, he kissed her softly, warm, gentle, and just enough to take her breath away. When their eyes met again, Jungkook whispered something low, his voice making her blush instantly. "Honestly, I've been wanting to kiss you all evening," he murmured, eyes flicking to her lips. "But it was too crowded back there. Now, I want to kiss you as much as I want." Before Yin could reply, Jungkook leaned in again, capturing her lips with deeper emotion. This time, it wasn't brief, but neither was it rushed. Yin returned the kiss, gently wrapping her arms around his neck, slowly shifting to sit on his lap. They kissed for a long time, slow and tender, without pressure, without haste, just warmth, and feelings that had long been kept inside, now finally pouring out under the soft glow of the living room lights.